cruise ship, thousands of people, the middle of an endless ocean. No police, no escape, just water stretching for days. Most passengers remember the laughter, the lights, the parties, but some remember what they can never forget. Footsteps outside empty cabins, whispers through locked doors, entire corridors that don't exist on the map. These are not legends. These are real encounters gathered from Reddit confessions, survivor testimonies, and hidden reports that cruise companies never want you to hear. 5 stories, each darker than the last, and once you hear them, you'll start questioning every hallway, every closed door, every shadow moving on the deck at night. So before we begin, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and welcome to Midnight Outcry. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and tell us in the comments if you'd still dare to step on a cruise ship after this. The first time I noticed him, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. A man in a dark navy suit, standing perfectly still at the edge of the promenade deck, his gaze fixed on the horizon. What unsettled me wasn't that he was out there at midnight, it was that every time I looked again, he was closer, and no one else seemed to see him. My name is Michael Rourke, I'm 38, and I work as a middle school history teacher in Kansas. I'm not the adventurous type. My life has been mostly routine, lesson plans, grading papers, and the occasional parent-teacher conference that leaves me drained. But earlier this year, I lost my younger brother Sean in a car accident. He was the outgoing one, the one who always said, "Mike, you need to live a little before it's too late." That's why I booked this cruise. It wasn't about the ocean, or the food, or even the ports. It was about honoring him. He had always wanted to go on one, and I thought maybe if I walked the decks, watched the sunrise at sea, I'd feel closer to him. The first 2 days were uneventful. Too uneventful, really. I forced myself to join trivia nights, to eat at the captain's welcome dinner, to smile at strangers. But deep down, I felt like an imposter. I wasn't here for fun. I was here chasing a ghost that would never answer me. On the 3rd night, I saw him. I was alone on deck 5, leaning against the railing, trying to write a few words in the journal I'd brought along. That's when my eyes caught the figure at the far end of the promenade. A man, motionless, staring out into the black ocean. His posture was too rigid, like a mannequin set in place. I blinked, shook my head, and when I looked back, he was gone. At least I thought he was. Because when I glanced to my left, he was suddenly 20 feet closer, standing beneath one of the deck lights. His face, I couldn't make it out. It was as if the glow slid right off his features, leaving them blurred, unfinished. I froze. My first instinct was to laugh it off, to tell myself it was just fatigue and grief mixing together. But the sound of footsteps began to echo behind me, slow, deliberate, and when I turned, there was no one. That night, I barely slept. And by morning, I started to realize something that made my stomach turn. At breakfast, in the main dining hall, I saw the same man seated at a corner table, surrounded by laughing families. Only when I looked closer, his chair was empty. For the rest of that morning, I couldn't shake the image. A man who seemed to exist only when I looked at him from the corner of my eye, who vanished the moment I tried to focus. By the afternoon, I convinced myself I needed to stop obsessing. I signed up for a shore excursion when the ship docked in Nassau. Something simple, a guided tour of the old forts. Sunlight, history, other tourists. It worked for a few hours. The tour guide cracked jokes, kids ran around with ice cream cones, and I even managed to take a few photos. For a brief moment, I felt almost normal. But when I returned to the ship, that sense of normal cracked. As we filed up the gangway, I felt eyes on me. Not the casual glance of other passengers, but a cold, fixed stare. I looked up toward the railing on deck 7, and there he was again, the man in the navy suit. This time, he was leaning over the rail slightly, like he was watching only me. My breath caught in my throat. A woman in line behind me muttered, "You okay, sir?" I nodded too quickly, embarrassed, and when I looked back up, the railing was empty. That night, I couldn't bring myself to eat in the main dining hall. I grabbed a sandwich from the cafe and carried it back to my cabin. The walls felt too close, the air too recycled. I flipped on the television for background noise, but every channel was either static or promotional footage of the ship. The longer I stared, the more I realized I wasn't hungry anyway. I was about to call it a night when I heard something. 3 knocks on my door. Slow. Too deliberate. I froze in the middle of the cabin. "Yeah?" My voice cracked. No answer. I edged closer, pressing my ear to the door. Silence. I told myself it was kids messing around. But when I finally worked up the nerve to open it, the hallway was empty. Too empty. Not even the distant hum of footsteps or muffled conversation. That's when I noticed it. Tucked under the edge of my door was a folded piece of paper. My pulse spiked as I bent to pick it up. The handwriting inside was jagged, rushed. "You've seen him too. Meet me at the aft bar, midnight. Don't be late." My hands trembled as I read the words over and over. Someone else knew. Someone else had seen him. At least, that's what I told myself. By midnight, the ship was quieter than I'd ever heard it. The aft bar was supposed to be open late, but when I arrived, the lights were dimmed and the chairs stacked. The door was unlocked though, and inside, one small table in the corner had a single glass of water waiting. Condensation slid down its side as if someone had been there moments before. But no one was there now. Or maybe they were, and I just couldn't see them. I sat in that bar corner longer than I should have. The untouched glass of water looked ordinary enough, but it felt wrong, like it was waiting for me. I checked my watch, 12:14 a.m. Whoever left the note hadn't shown. I told myself I'd give it another 5 minutes, then leave, but the ship had other plans. The lights above me flickered once, then again, dimming to a low, uneasy glow. The hum of the engines, the heartbeat of the ship, shifted, sinking lower, slower. It almost felt as if the entire ocean seraph was holding its breath. And then I saw him. The man in the Navy suit stood across the bar, near the stacked chairs. He wasn't moving, wasn't breathing, just watching. His face was hazy, indistinct, as though I was looking at him through warped glass. "Hey!" I forced my voice louder than I felt. It cracked the silence, echoing through the empty bar. He didn't answer. Instead, the glass of water on my table slid half an inch across the wood, by itself. My throat went dry. I shoved back my chair, the scrape deafening in the stillness. That's when I noticed something worse. In the mirrored wall behind the bar, I could see myself standing there, pale, shaken. The stacked chairs, the counter. Everything looked exactly as it should, except the reflection of the man. In the mirror, he wasn't across the room. He was standing right behind me. I spun, heart slamming into my ribs. The bar was empty. The reflection wasn't lying, though. When I looked back, he was still there, closer now, his face sharper, eyes hollow and fixed on mine. I stumbled backwards, knocking into a table. The glass of water toppled, spilling across the floor. My breath came fast, too loud. And then, like someone had flipped a switch, the lights blazed back to normal. The hum of the ship steadied. The mirror showed nothing but my own panicked face. The bar was empty again. But on the wet table where the glass had spilled, words were traced in the condensation, letters dripping like ink. "Don't leave. You're part of this now." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that reflection. Him behind me, too close, too silent. The words on the table kept replaying in my head. "Don't leave. You're part of this now." By morning, the ship seemed perfectly normal again. Sunlight poured through the atrium windows. Families laughed on the pool deck. Crew members moved briskly with trays of food and folded towels. If I hadn't lived through the night, I'd have sworn it was just a nightmare. But then I noticed the stares. Not from everyone, just a few. An older woman with a wide-brimmed hat. A young couple near the buffet line. A man reading the morning paper. Their heads all turned at the same moment, eyes following me as if on cue. When I looked back a second time, they were already pretending to talk, laugh, chew their food. Like I hadn't seen it, I carried my breakfast tray to a quiet corner, pretending not to notice. My fork shook against the plate. Out of instinct, I reached for my phone. No signal, of course, not even Wi-Fi. The little icon just spun and spun like it was mocking me. And then, tap, a folded napkin slid across my table. I didn't see who placed it there. My stomach dropped. With shaking hands, I opened it. The writing was shaky, rushed, in pen that bled through the fabric. "We see you. Don't trust the passengers. Meet me at the theater tonight. Midnight." I looked around. Everyone carried on as if nothing had happened. No one watched me now. The napkin felt damp, like it had been sitting in seawater. That night, I almost didn't go. Every sane bone in my body told me to stay locked in my cabin, wedge the door, and pray. But curiosity, that damned magnet pulling me toward answers, won again. The theater was dark when I entered. Seats folded neatly, the faint smell of stale popcorn lingering. The heavy curtains hung like a velvet wall, shadows pooling beneath them. And then, movement. A figure slipped out from behind the curtain. A man, pale, thin, eyes darting. He looked more exhausted than afraid. His voice was hoarse, almost broken when he spoke. "You saw him, didn't you? The one who's not there." My throat tightened. "Who are you?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pressed something into my hand. A small, wrinkled photo. It showed the ocean seraph, decades younger, docked at a harbor. Standing on the gangway were passengers in outdated clothes. At the edge of the crowd, almost blending in, was the man in the Navy suit. The same blurred face. The stranger's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's been on every voyage, every ship, and once he notices you, you're already his." The lights flickered. The theater went black. When the lights came back on, the man was gone. Not like he'd run off. Gone. Vanished. The photo he'd pressed into my hand was still there, but it was damp now, edges curling like it had been soaking in seawater for years. My breath came shallow, too loud in the cavernous silence of the theater. "Hello?" My voice cracked, echoing back at me. A sound answered. Not a voice. Shoes. Leather soles. Deliberate. Measured. Walking down the aisle toward me. I froze, staring at the silhouette. The Navy suit. The blurred face that seemed to flicker every time I tried to focus on it. He stopped 3 rows away, and though I couldn't see his eyes, I felt them burrow into me. I don't want any trouble," I whispered. The figure tilted his head, as if considering me. Then, he raised a hand and pointed. Not at me, at the exit doors. I bolted. The doors groaned when I shoved them open. The hallway outside stretched longer than I remembered, lights flickering in nauseating patterns. I ran, heart hammering, the sound of shoes following but never rushing. Always steady, always measured. When I reached the atrium, it wasn't the same place I had walked through earlier. Passengers stood perfectly still, frozen, mid-laughter, mid-step, mid-drink. The fountain in the center poured water that never moved, droplets suspended in mid-air. And then, all at once, their heads turned, every single one, toward me. The whispers began again, layered, overlapping, not from mouths but from the walls, the floor, the air itself. "You shouldn't have boarded. You're his now. Stay." I stumbled backward, gripping the railing, the photo still crumpled in my fist. The fountain water began moving again, upward, defying gravity, twisting into shapes that almost looked like hands. The man in the suit stepped into the atrium. The frozen passengers parted for him, their faces blank, their bodies shifting in eerie unison. My survival instinct screamed. I tore down a side corridor, sprinting until my lungs burned. At the end, a single cabin door stood open, light spilling through. I dove inside and slammed it shut. Silence. I turned. The cabin was identical to mine. Same bedspread, same suitcase, even the same half-finished bottle of water on the nightstand. But lying on the bed was a notebook. My handwriting. I flipped it open. Pages upon pages described what had already happened. The flickering lights, the man in the suit, the whispers, the napkin, the theater. The last entry, written in shaky letters, read, "Don't leave this room. If you do, you'll see him again." A knock rattled the door behind me. Slow, deliberate, knock, knock, knock. I clutched the notebook, every nerve screaming. The handle turned, inch by inch, and then the lights went out. Darkness, not the kind you get when lights flicker out. This was heavier, thicker, like the ship itself had inhaled all the light and refused to let go. My hand shook as I slid it along the wall, trying to find the switch, the lamp, anything. But instead, my fingers brushed against wallpaper. No. Fabric. Damp, cold fabric, like the lining of a coffin. The knock came again, louder this time. Knock. 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 I fumbled for my phone, but the screen was black. Dead. Still. I could feel the photo in my other hand, edges sharp, dampness seeping into my skin. The handle twisted fully, the door creaking open. A thin beam of hallway light sliced through the dark, and there he was, the man in the navy suit. Except he wasn't alone. Behind him, crowding the corridor, stood the passengers, expressionless, silent, each one dripping with seawater that pooled at their feet. Their eyes glowed faintly, like dull lanterns, and every single one of them stared directly at me. The man stepped into the room, shoes dripping, leaving wet footprints on the carpet. He raised a hand, not in threat, but in offering. I wanted to scream, but something deeper than fear rooted me. A weight pressed down on my chest, not crushing, but commanding. "You took his place," a voice whispered, not from him, but from everywhere. "He never boarded. You did." The notebook in my hand shifted. Pages fluttered on their own until they stopped at a blank one. Words etched themselves into the paper, ink forming letter by letter. "Cabin 6 to 241 is yours now. Write it down. Remember." My breath hitched. That was my cabin number. The one on my key card. But when I looked again, there was no suitcase, no bottle of water, no sign I had ever stayed here, just the notebook. The man in the suit extended his hand closer. His face shimmered, flickering between features. Sometimes mine. "No," I whispered. The passengers stepped forward in unison, seawater flooding across the carpet, lapping at my shoes. The photo in my hand dissolved into wet pulp. The notebook stayed dry, waiting. And then the whispers rose, layering, deafening. "Stay, write, become." The last thing I remember was the man's cold hand closing over mine, forcing the pen between my fingers. The ink bled across the page, not in words I chose, but in ones the ship dictated. The Ocean Serenade docked in Miami a week later. Families disembarked, couples laughed, crew bustled. No one mentioned the missing passenger list. No one questioned why cabin 6 to 241 was marked unavailable for maintenance. But if you checked the drawer inside, you'd find a notebook. Open it, and the first line, written in my handwriting, reads, "I should have never taken that cruise." Story 2. The first time I saw him, I thought I'd lost my mind. A man in a dark navy suit stood at the very edge of the promenade deck, perfectly still, staring at the black ocean, as if it owed him something. What froze me wasn't his presence. It was the certainty that each time I blinked, he had moved closer. And yet, nobody else seemed to notice. I'm Samuel Hayes, 35, a high school literature teacher from Chicago. I'm not the adventurous type. Most of my life is spent grading essays, coaching the debate team, and avoiding conflict. But earlier this year, my sister Clara passed unexpectedly. She loved the ocean. She had begged me often to take a cruise with her, and now it felt like the only way to honor her memory. That's why I found myself on the Ocean Serenade, alone, clutching a small journal, watching waves under a waning moon. The first 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. I forced myself into the dining hall, laughed at jokes I didn't find funny, tried to feel alive. But the third night changed everything. I was leaning against the railing on deck 6, scribbling a few thoughts about Clara when I saw him. Motionless, at the far end of the deck. His posture was stiff, almost mechanical. I shook my head. When I looked again, he was closer, beneath the dim glow of the deck lights. I couldn't make out his face. It was blurred, like fog rolling across a window pane. Footsteps echoed behind me, slow, deliberate. I spun. Nothing. The ship was empty. By morning, the image haunted me. In the dining hall, I saw him again, seated in a corner where laughter surrounded him. But his chair was empty. I forced myself to ignore it, tried to distract myself with a shore excursion in Nassau. The sun, the forts, even other tourists helped for a short while. But when I returned to the ship, it was like the air had shifted. From deck 7, I caught him again, leaning over the railing, staring straight at me. My heart raced. The woman behind me asked if I was okay. I nodded, too fast. By the time I looked back, he was gone. That night, in my cabin, the hum of the ship felt heavier. 3 knocks came at my door. Slow, deliberate. "Yeah?" My voice cracked. Silence. No one in the hallway. But tucked under the door was a note. "You've seen him too. Meet me at the aft bar. Midnight. Don't be late." The aft bar was empty when I arrived. Chairs stacked. Lights dim. 1 glass of water waited on a corner table. Condensation slid down its side. I waited. The lights flickered. The engine hum sank lower. And there he was, standing across the room. Motionless, blurred. "Hey!" My voice trembled. Nothing. Then I noticed the mirror. In it, he wasn't across from me. He was standing right behind me. I spun. The bar was empty. The reflection remained. The glass toppled. Letters appeared on the wet surface. "Don't leave. You're part of this now." Morning brought sunlight and normalcy, almost. Families laughed on the deck. Crew hustled. Almost normal. But some passengers, the woman in the hat, the couple by the buffet, kept staring, heads moving as if synced to my own gaze. I reached for my phone. No signal. Wi-Fi spun endlessly. Then, a folded napkin slid across my table. "We see you. Don't trust the passengers. Meet me at the theater tonight. Midnight." I almost didn't go, but curiosity, Clara's voice in my mind, pulled me toward it. The theater was dark, the air stale, and then movement. A pale, exhausted man slipped from behind the curtain. "You saw him, didn't you?" he whispered. He pressed a photo into my hand. The Ocean Serenade, decades earlier. On the gangway, a crowd in outdated clothes. At the edge, the navy-suited man, blurred. "He's on every voyage," the stranger murmured. "And once he notices you, you're already his." The lights flickered. Darkness swallowed the theater. When they returned, he was gone. But the photo was damp, the edges curling like it had been soaking in seawater. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man behind me, blurred and still, just at the edge of my vision. Morning sunlight did nothing to calm me. The ship hummed normally, passengers laughed, crew bustled, but something felt wrong, like everyone was acting on cue, their movements subtly too perfect. Breakfast in the main dining hall was almost unbearable. Plates clanked, servers moved briskly, but I noticed the same subtle synchronicity I'd seen the day before, heads turning just a fraction too late, eyes glancing toward me before returning to conversation. It was unnerving, like the whole ship was aware of me, but silent about it. I tried to distract myself. Trivia, shuffleboard, even the casino. For a few hours, the usual clatter and laughter helped. But then came the first real shock. In the arcade, I glanced toward the back row of machines, and there he was, the navy-suited man, half shrouded in shadow, watching me as if studying my every movement. My heart hammered. I turned, and he was gone. No footsteps, no shuffle of clothing, nothing. By evening, I decided I needed answers. The note from the theater burned in my pocket. I made my way there early, trying to appear casual. The heavy curtains hung, and the stale smell of popcorn greeted me. Only one figure stirred behind the curtain, the pale, exhausted man from before. He looked at me like I'd startled him. "You shouldn't be here alone," he whispered. "Last night, you were lucky to get away. Few do. Most, they vanish without notice." I swallowed, trying to sound calm. "Why? What is he?" The man shook his head. "Nobody knows his name. The crew never mentioned Deck 7. Histories vanish. People board. People disappear. He waits. He watches. And once he chooses, you're already part of him." I glanced down at the damp photograph he pressed into my hand again. The older ship, the crowd, the Navy suit, blurred at the edge. Something about it felt wrong, unreal. I shoved it into my pocket. "Last time, I tried to warn someone." The man continued, voice trembling. "They ran straight into the promenade deck, never returned. This ship, it doesn't like to let go." The theater lights flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally. A soft, almost imperceptible tapping echoed from the back. Footsteps, though no one approached. My stomach dropped. I realized this. The ship itself wasn't merely a vessel. It was an environment tuned to him. It shaped the decks, corridors, even passenger movements, all to keep you exposed and afraid. He leaned closer, eyes darting nervously. "The passengers? Not real. Part of the program, I guess. Only he and those already noticed can see them. If you leave, you'll draw attention. The ship punishes mistakes." I nodded numbly. "So what do I do? Observe. Don't trust anyone. Keep moving. Keep your wits. And if you see him in a reflection, don't turn around immediately. Wait. He likes impatience." I spent the rest of the evening on edge, wandering the dim hallways, taking in small details. A lifeboat deck with ropes dangling unnaturally. A maintenance hatch slightly ajar with shadows flitting inside. The sound of water gurgling somewhere below. Each moment, each corner promised a new terror. Each hallway whispered in subtle urgency. Midnight arrived too fast. I returned to the aft deck, the photo in one pocket, journal in the other. The Navy-suited man was there, leaning casually, almost relaxed, a terrifying calm. My pulse thumped in my ears. "You know why you're here?" he said softly, voice low but echoing in my mind more than the air. I didn't answer. I wanted to run, but the hall stretched infinitely, the ship reshaping itself. Each step felt heavier. Then, footsteps behind me. Not hurried, not running, measured. I turned slightly. The passengers I had seen all day, smiling families, couples, crew, had appeared behind me, expressionless, water pooling at their shoes, eyes blank, staring. A sense of wrongness settled like ice. I realized with horror that the note, the theater, the photograph, it had all been designed to draw me in. A trap, subtle, patient, unyielding. I ran down a side corridor. The passengers parted automatically, like marionettes. The man in the suit followed, his figure flickering in the dim lights, almost intangible. I reached a cabin, any cabin, pushed inside, slammed the door. The room was identical to mine, same bedspread, same suitcase. Only difference, a notebook lay on the bed. My handwriting inside, but detailing events I hadn't lived yet. The last entry read, "He notices you first. Don't resist." A knock rattled the door. Slow, heavy, knock, knock, knock. I realized this wasn't random. The ship, the passengers, the man, they were all part of a single, orchestrated horror. And the notebook, it was waiting for me to write, to record, to join. The lights flickered. A whisper brushed past my ear. "Stay. Become." The next day, I barely managed to eat. The ship felt alive, every creak and groan deliberate, timed to my steps. I tried to keep to familiar areas, the pool deck, the sun lounges, even the midship cafeteria, but nothing felt safe. The passengers continued their charade, laughing couples, children tossing beach balls, crew moving briskly, but their eyes always flicked toward me for a fraction of a second before returning to normal. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it made my skin crawl. By late afternoon, I realized I needed to test the boundaries. I deliberately walked past Deck 7, the forbidden deck the pale man had warned me about. The corridor was narrower than I remembered, the fluorescent lights buzzing in low frequency, casting long shadows. Halfway down, I heard it, the shuffle of shoes behind me, echoing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I turned. Empty hallway. I froze, eyes darting to the maintenance doors, the lifeboat hatches, every corner. Nothing. I took a deep breath and continued. That's when I saw it, a reflection in the polished brass of a door handle. The man in the navy suit stood right behind me, only he wasn't there when I turned. The reflection, it lied. My stomach dropped. My steps quickened, but every corridor I entered seemed to stretch, twist, as if the ship itself had a mind. I ducked into a side hallway and ran past several cabins. A faint light flickered at the end, like a candle in the dark. I approached cautiously, feeling the ship's hum intensify underfoot, vibrations running through the soles of my shoes. The closer I got, the more I felt it. The presence, cold, heavy, watching. At the door, I paused. A soft voice whispered from the darkness inside, "You shouldn't have come here." I yanked the handle. The cabin was empty. No furniture, no bed, just a single mirror against the wall. And in it, the man in the navy suit, closer than ever. I stumbled back, heart racing, almost tripping over the threshold. When I looked up again, the mirror reflected only me, but I could feel him, just behind, breathing softly, waiting. I fled the corridor, desperate to escape, but the hallway began to loop. The exit doors I thought I saw moments ago vanished, replaced by endless stretches of walls and deck markings that didn't match my memory. Panic surged. My pulse pounded like a drum. Footsteps followed, steady, deliberate. I ducked into a service hatch, sliding the metal door shut. Inside, the air smelled of rust, salt, and damp insulation. I pressed my back against the wall, gasping. The ship groaned, a low, resonant note that rattled my bones. And then, a whisper from the shadows. "You can't hide. You're already his." Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost all meaning. When I finally emerged, I tried to convince myself it was my imagination. The promenade deck lay bathed in sunlight, passengers enjoying the ocean breeze, crew moving efficiently. Nothing seemed out of place, but when I glanced toward the railing, I saw him again, the navy-suited man, standing perfectly still, staring directly at me, utterly indifferent to the world around him. I needed help. I went to the ship's bridge, hoping the captain or officers could explain anything. The hallways leading there stretched impossibly long. Each step echoed unnaturally, bouncing off walls that seemed to shift slightly as I passed. Finally, I reached the door. Inside, the bridge was empty. Controls sat idle, monitors flickering only static. The radar showed nothing but endless ocean. No crew, no officers. Just me and the hum of machinery. I sank into a chair, shaking. My hands fumbled in my pocket, clutching the damp photograph. And then I noticed something that made my stomach twist, a digital display, flashing a single line in a looping message. "Cabin 6 to 241. You belong there." I bolted. Every corridor now seemed alive, pulsating, twisting. Doors opened where they shouldn't. Shadows stretched unnaturally, and the whispers grew louder, overlapping, layering into a chorus of warning. I stumbled into the dining hall, empty, silent, chairs stacked, tables set neatly, but one seat at the far end was pulled out slightly. I approached it. Nothing was there, but in the polished silver plate on the table, I saw it, his reflection, standing behind me, towering, indistinct, impossible. I spun around. Empty hall. My heart raced. The air thickened. And then the whispers crescendoed, coming from everywhere. You can't leave. You're his now. Write it down. Remember. I ran, turning corner after corner, each hallway reshaping, mocking me. I didn't stop until I saw a faint light. My cabin, or a cabin identical to mine. The notebook lay on the bed. The pages were blank, waiting. I knew, deep down, I had no choice. The ship had chosen, and I was trapped. The cabin door closed behind me with a final, echoing thud. I pressed my back to it, heart hammering, every nerve screaming that I should run, though I had no idea where. The notebook lay on the bed, edges curling as if breathing. I hesitated, fingers trembling, before picking it up. Blank pages, waiting. Waiting for what? For him to tell me. A soft thump came from the ceiling. My eyes darted upward. Nothing. Another thump, louder. The floor beneath me vibrated faintly, as though the ship itself was alive, aware, testing me. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to move. Clutching the notebook, I opened the cabin door. The hallway stretched impossibly, dim lights flickering in a way that made the walls look like they breathed. I stumbled forward. Whispers crawled along the walls, under the carpet, through the ventilation. Cabin 6 to 241. Write it down. Belong. Belong. The sound made my stomach twist. I tried to cover my ears, but the murmurs penetrated, subtle, insistent, dragging me towards something I didn't want to face. At the end of the corridor, the atrium appeared. Daylight was gone. The lights were low, casting sharp shadows across the marble floor. The fountain in the center wasn't moving. Its water hung frozen mid-air, droplets suspended as if gravity had forgotten them. And then I saw them, the passengers, standing perfectly still, every head turned toward me, eyes blank, faces pale. Their bodies radiated a dampness, like they had just emerged from seawater. At first, I thought it was some trick of my mind. I blinked, looked again. No. Every single one was frozen in that unnatural pose. And at the edge of the crowd, the navy-suited man. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, the sound of his shoes clicking across the marble. His face flickered, features changing subtly, sometimes mine, sometimes a stranger's. I swallowed hard, my voice catching in my throat. I don't want this. I just came here for a trip. He didn't answer. The room seemed to inhale, the weight of it pressing down. I tried to run. The corridors twisted, led me back to the atrium no matter which door I chose. Every attempt to escape brought me here, where the frozen passengers waited. Then I saw the notebook's pages begin to fill on their own. Words bled across the paper. You are chosen. Cabin 6 to 241. Belong. Write it down. Remember. My hand, seemingly of its own accord, reached for the pen. The ink flowed across the pages, letters forming sentences I didn't consciously create. I shook my head violently. No! Stop! A low chuckle echoed, not from a person, but from the air itself. The passengers blinked simultaneously, for the first time moving as one. Their lips parted, whispering in unison. Stay, write, become. The navy-suited man raised his hand again, pointing to the pen. My fingers clenched around it, trembling. My mind screamed, fight it, fight it. But the ship's hum grew louder, vibrating through my chest, syncing with my heartbeat. Resistance felt pointless. I glanced at the fountain. The water began to ripple upward, twisting into claw-like shapes reaching toward me. Shadows stretched and merged with the figures around me, forming a living mass of motion, soundless but threatening. And then, a voice, soft and insistent, from somewhere deep inside me. Write it down, Michael. You're part of this now. The pen pressed to the page. Letters flowed in ink, unbidden. Words I didn't know how to form escaped my mind, streaming from the pen in an unstoppable torrent. The moment I finished the line, a shiver ran through the ship. The passengers staggered back, blending into the walls, the floor, even the water. Only he remained. The navy-suited figure, taller now, more distinct, his hollow gaze fixed on me. The notebook snapped shut. Silence. The fountain splashed back to normal. Passengers resumed normal motion, laughter and chatter, returning in a fraction of a second. The ship, once a cage of shadows, felt like a regular cruise again. The lights glowed warmly, the engines hummed steadily, and the smell of salt and coffee returned to the atrium. Yet the notebook remained on my lap, damp edges, and the first line written in a bold, flowing hand. I should have never taken that cruise. I wanted to leave, to dash for the lifeboats, to call the authorities, to erase every memory of the last few hours. But the cabin key in my pocket now read cabin 6 to 241. The number etched itself in my mind, inescapable. The ship had chosen, and I had no choice. A knock came at the cabin door. Slow, deliberate. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move. The handle twisted ever so slightly. I knew, without doubt, that the navy-suited man waited on the other side. Not just waiting. Waiting for me to fully belong. Waiting for me to write again. The last line of the notebook glimmered faintly in the dim light. "Don't leave. You're already his." And then the hum of the ship deepened, louder than the engines, louder than my heartbeat, a presence that wrapped around me and would not let go. I dropped the notebook. My reflection in the polished floor showed only me, but a shadow lingered behind it, perfectly still, watching. The door handle turned fully. Darkness swallowed the cabin. Story 3. Why is everyone gone? The words weren't mine, yet I heard them echo from somewhere behind me the moment I stepped onto the promenade deck. The sea spread out like black glass, the ship humming beneath my shoes, and for an instant, I could have sworn the rail itself breathed. My name is Evan Miller. I'm 32 years old, a high school history teacher from Hartford, Connecticut. I booked this cruise because, after my father's funeral, silence in my apartment grew unbearable. My mother insisted I take a break, go somewhere. I didn't have to think about grading papers or loss. I chose the Ocean Sovereign because it promised warmth, music, distraction. Instead, I found a silence that was different. Wrong, like waiting for a voice that never comes. The first night was normal enough. Dinner was loud with clinking glasses, chatter of retirees comparing ports, kids chasing each other between tables. A pianist played light jazz in the atrium. I smiled when the waiter poured my wine and asked if I was traveling alone. I lied, said I was meeting friends later, because saying the truth out loud, that there was no one left, felt too heavy. But even then, something ticked at the edges. The lights in the chandeliers flickered in unison every few minutes. A couple at the table beside me kept glancing toward the glass elevators as though waiting for someone. And when I took the long way back to my cabin, I passed a corridor that wasn't listed on the ship's map. A brass plaque read, "Crew only," but the door stood slightly open. A draft of cold, briny air slipped through. I told myself ships were labyrinths, service tunnels, maintenance shafts, but I couldn't shake the way it smelled, not like sea air, but like something old. The next morning, breakfast hall was bustling. A kid spilled orange juice on me, and his mom apologized profusely. I laughed it off, grateful for the human normalcy. That's when an older passenger leaned toward me. His eyes were pale, watery, his voice a whisper, swallowed by the clatter of dishes. "They say the Sovereign sails longer than it should. Check the plaques on the walls. The years don't add up." Before I could reply, a waiter stepped between us, asked if I wanted more coffee, and when I looked back, the old man was gone. Later that afternoon, I joined a trivia game by the pool. Sunlight shimmered on the surface, people laughed, and for a while I felt lighter. But midway, a woman across from me froze mid-sentence. Her smile stayed fixed, her eyes glassy. No one else seemed to notice. When I blinked, She was laughing again, as if nothing had happened. That night, walking back to my cabin, I heard footsteps matching mine exactly. When I stopped, they stopped. I turned sharply, expecting a drunk passenger, but the corridor was empty. Just condensation dripping down the walls, collecting in a puddle at my feet. My cabin door was cold to the touch, colder than the air around it. And when I opened it, the faint hum of the ship felt louder inside, as though the room itself was listening. I tried to sleep, but at 2:17 a.m., a voice whispered from the corner, "You're supposed to watch." I sat up so fast my neck cracked. The lamp switch clicked under my thumb, but the bulb only sputtered and went dark again, humming faintly like a trapped fly. The room was still. Too still. My breath clouded in the air, as if the air conditioner had been set to freezing, though the control panel glowed a steady 72. I forced myself to check every corner. Nothing. Just the bed, the desk bolted to the wall, the mirror above it reflecting a pale, tense version of me. I pressed my palms to the desk, steadying my hands. Ships creak. Pipes whistle. My mind was looking for voices where there weren't any. That had to be it. The next morning, I needed normal. I dressed, grabbed a coffee, and walked the deck in bright sunlight. Families sprawled on loungers. Kids squealed in the pool. A steel band played under a canopy. For a while, I almost convinced myself the night before had been a product of exhaustion. Then I spotted the old man again, the one who'd whispered about the ship's years not adding up. He stood alone near the railing, staring straight down at the waves. I walked over, careful. "Sir, you okay?" He didn't answer. His lips moved, but the words drowned under the music and chatter. I leaned closer. "They build over their own bones," he muttered, eyes still fixed on the water. "Every voyage, more names." "What does that mean?" I asked. A cheer erupted near the pool, and when I glanced back, he was gone. No trace of him in either direction. By noon, the fog rolled in. The captain's voice came over the PA, cheerful and rehearsed. "Just a patch of weather, folks. Nothing to worry about. Activities continue as planned." But the fog stayed thick, swallowing the horizon. Even close up, colors looked dulled, like I was viewing them through old glass. In the dining hall that evening, I sat near a couple from Florida, retirees with matching polos. They were friendly, chatting about shore excursions, and I found myself relaxing. I needed that. But halfway through dessert, the woman stopped speaking mid-sentence, spoon hovering. Her husband kept nodding, as if she'd finished her thought. I glanced around. The waitstaff continued serving. No one noticed she hadn't moved in nearly 30 seconds. Then she blinked, smiled, and went on like nothing had happened. I excused myself, unsettled, and wandered the lower decks. The crew passage door from before stood ajar again. Against better judgment, I pushed it open. The air inside was freezing, tinged with metal and mildew. A narrow stairwell spiraled down. The hum of the engines vibrated through the walls, and underneath it, something slower, like a heartbeat. I descended one level. Dim bulbs cast sickly light across peeling paint. Along the corridor, brass plaques marked cabins that shouldn't exist, numbered 300s, though the Sovereign's layout ended in the 200s. I pressed my ear to one. At first, silence. Then, soft weeping. A door creaked somewhere behind me. I spun, pulse hammering. Nothing, just that draft again, pushing damp air against my face. I hurried back up, nearly running into a steward carrying a tray of linens. He smiled politely, but his eyes didn't move with his smile. They stayed locked on me, unblinking, until I slipped past. That night, back in my cabin, I found something on my desk. A folded napkin from the dining hall. My name was written across it in shaky pen. I hadn't told anyone my name. I tore it open with numb fingers. Inside, 3 words. Check Deck 7. If you're listening to this, take a second to subscribe to Midnight Outcry. It helps keep stories like this alive. Sleep didn't come. Every time my eyes closed, I heard footsteps in the hall, pacing, always stopping right at my door. By morning, I'd made up my mind. Whatever was on deck 7, I had to see it. The lake should have been empty. No boats, no swimmers, just dark water, smooth as glass. But when Evan leaned closer, ripples spread out from nowhere, as if something beneath had shifted. He froze. His reflection wavered, blurred, and for a heartbeat, it wasn't him at all. A girl's face flickered on the surface, wet hair clinging to pale cheeks, lips moving as if whispering from under the water. Evan stumbled back. The dock creaked under his weight, the wood groaning. The diary's words flashed in his mind. Don't look too long. Don't let her see you. But it was too late. From the trees behind him came the crunch of leaves, slow and deliberate. He turned sharply, expecting a camper, a ranger, anyone. But the woods were still, dead quiet. "Hello?" His voice cracked in the silence. No answer. Only the faint drip, 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 as if water was falling from branches. Except the night was dry. Back inside the cabin, Evan tried to steady his breathing. He locked the door, shoved a chair against it. His phone had no signal. No bars, no Wi-Fi, nothing. He scrolled through his photos, just to distract himself, but his blood iced when he noticed a new picture he hadn't taken. It was the lake. Same view he'd just seen. But in the center of the water, there was a figure standing upright, not floating, standing. Long hair hung over her face, her arms bent at impossible angles. Evan's hand trembled as he swiped, but another picture appeared. Then, another, each one closer. The last was taken from inside the cabin, right behind him. He dropped the phone. The cabin lights flickered, then steadied. Shadows seemed to crawl across the walls like liquid, moving against the grain of the wood. "Stop it," he whispered to himself. "It's in your head, just lack of sleep." But then, knock. Not at the door, at the window. He didn't want to look. Every nerve screamed at him not to. But his eyes betrayed him. The glass was fogged from inside, yet a handprint slowly pressed against it from the other side. A child-sized hand, fingers splayed wide. Evan staggered back, chair legs screeching against the floor. The hand slid downward, leaving a trail of moisture. And faintly, through the foggy glass, lips appeared, whispering something soundless. His rational mind clawed for explanation. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe locals messing with him. Maybe his exhaustion was feeding hallucinations. But then the diary's next page came back to him. Scrawled in jagged letters, "She doesn't knock twice. The second time, she's already inside." And almost on cue, another knock. From behind him, Evan spun. The front door stood shut, chair still wedged under the knob. Yet the wood trembled, not from outside, but as if something was pushing against it from within the cabin itself. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything, and with it came the soft sound of water rushing under the floorboards, filling the space where no water should be. The cabin was flooding. Water seeped from beneath the floorboards, icy around Evan's shoes, rising faster than made sense. He stumbled for the door, shoved the chair aside, and yanked it open, only to be met by the same lake stretching endlessly outside. No porch, no forest, just black water lapping against the threshold. He slammed the door shut, heart hammering, breath coming ragged. This isn't real. It can't be real. But then, a voice. A woman's, low and broken, dripping with echo. "Stay." It came from the corner. Evan's eyes adjusted, and there she was. The figure from the photos. Drenched hair clung to her face, skin mottled and pale. She stood half in shadow, half in moonlight, water dripping steadily onto the wooden floor. He bolted for the window, shattered it with a chair, and hauled himself through the frame. Splinters tore his arms, but adrenaline kept him moving. He sprinted down the dirt trail, lungs burning, branches clawing at his skin. For a moment, blessedly, he saw headlights ahead. A road. Civilization. He stumbled toward it, screaming, "Help! Please! Help!" A car slowed. Its brake lights glowed red. Evan nearly collapsed with relief. He yanked the back door open and dove inside. The driver turned, face half lit by the dashboard. A young woman with dripping hair, her mouth curling into something that wasn't a smile. "You found me?" she whispered. The car interior dissolved. Water poured in, up to his chest, up to his chin. Evan thrashed, choking, clawing for air. And suddenly he was back in the cabin, soaked, shaking, on the floor. He gagged, coughing up lake water, the taste sharp and metallic. His phone buzzed beside him. The screen lit up. One new photo. Hands trembling, he opened it. It was himself, sitting on the cabin floor. But the timestamp read, tomorrow. The walls groaned, swelling outward as if the whole structure was breathing. From every surface, mirrors, glass, even the sheen of pooled water, faces pressed outward, blurred and screaming. Evan staggered to his feet, desperate. He grabbed the diary again, flipping through waterlogged pages until one line leapt out, written in darker ink, as if meant for him. Escape isn't leaving, escape is letting go. The window glass rippled like water, and a pale hand reached through, grasping his wrist. Cold, pulling. Evan screamed, tore free, and lunged for the door. But when he opened it, he no longer saw the forest or the lake. Only endless rows of cabins, each door slightly ajar, each one whispering his name. And from inside every cabin he saw himself. Evan ran. The corridor of cabins bent and twisted with every step, doors yawning wider, whispers crawling into his ears like insects. He slammed them shut as he passed, but each handle burned with cold. Each lock clicked open again behind him. Evan! His own voice, layered hundreds of times, oozed from every cabin. He turned a corner and found a stairwell. The metal railing was slick beneath his grip, rust biting into his palm. He shoved upward, taking steps 3 at a time, lungs tearing in the damp air. At the top, finally, an exit sign glowing red. He slammed through it, burst onto an open deck, and nearly collapsed from relief. The lake stretched wide and black around him, but the cruise ship was there, the Sunset Voyager. Its decks were lit, alive. He could hear laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of engines. "God, thank you," he choked. He waved both arms, screaming himself hoarse. "Help! Down here! Somebody! Please!" On the rail above, passengers leaned over. Dozens of them, their faces in shadow, their outlines sharp in the artificial glow. They raised their hands in eerie unison and waved back, not beckoning, not reaching, just waving, like he was part of the view. Evan's chest locked tight, his knees buckled. No, this isn't real. But the ship horn thundered once, shaking the water. The whole vessel seemed to tilt toward him. The lake surged, waves rising higher than should be possible. Water swept across the deck he stood on, smashing through windows, pulling him off his feet. He clawed at the railing, screaming, but the current wrenched him free and dragged him under. Cold filled his lungs. Black swallowed his sight. When he opened his eyes again, he was back in the cabin. Dry, sitting at the table, a pen in his hand. The diary opened before him, and the words spilling across the page weren't his, yet they moved with his hand. "My name is Evan Miller, 32. I came here because I didn't believe the stories. If you're reading this, you will be next." The pen scratched to a stop. Evan tried to let go, but his fingers wouldn't release it. The mirror across the room caught his reflection. Only it wasn't his face anymore. It was hers. The drowned woman. The one who had been waiting. Her lips curved into a smile as his body wrote the final line. Escape isn't leaving. Escape is becoming. The lights snapped out, plunging the cabin into darkness. And the diary slammed shut on its own. Story 4. The first time I noticed it, something was wrong with the stairwell lights. They didn't flicker like a bulb about to die. They pulsed, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat beneath the ship's metal ribs. I'm Caleb Turner, 35, history teacher from Chicago, recently divorced and desperate for some quiet escape. I booked this cruise, the Sea Monarch, mainly to remind myself there was still a world outside the endless grind of grading essays and passive-aggressive colleagues. I'm not a thrill seeker. I like my vacations calm, quiet, predictable. That's why what I encountered feels unreal even now. On the first night, everything seemed normal. The ship hummed gently, engines thrumming below decks, neon lights painting corridors in washed-out blues and greens. A few passengers laughed down by the lounge, the scent of fried food mixing oddly with the salt air. I even met a young couple on deck 6, friendly, joking about seasickness. A normal scene. A scene I should have remembered longer, but later, as I returned to my cabin on deck 7, I noticed the stairwell again. The lights pulsed. No one else was around. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rust and blood, and the hum of the engine seemed wrong, lower, deeper. I shrugged it off. Exhaustion, I told myself. Divorce brain. Too much coffee. But then the first whisper came. My name. It wasn't in English at first, just a low hiss carried by the vents. I froze. The echo traveled up and down the corridor. Caleb, I looked around. No one in sight. The doors to the cabins along the hall were all closed. The hallway was empty, impossibly silent, except for that slow, rhythmic thrum from below. I pushed onward, trying to convince myself I imagined it. On deck 7, the ship had a history I hadn't read before boarding. The Sea Monarch had been in service since 1972. Records showed several mysterious disappearances among passengers, cases closed, mostly attributed to misadventure or drunken stunts. The crew never mentioned it. Nobody warned me. I found the little notice in an old cruise brochure I picked up at the terminal. By the time I reached my cabin, I felt a faint draft brushing my neck. The door handle rattled, slow, tentative, like a visitor unsure if it should announce itself. I wasn't about to open it. Instead, I stepped back into the hall, heart hammering. That's when I saw the first anomaly. A cabin across the hall, 712, the light inside flickering, and someone sitting at the small desk. A man. But he wasn't moving. Not at all. And then I realized the reflection of the lamp in the mirror was wrong. The man's head twisted slowly toward me, impossibly, without moving his body. I ran, not down the corridor, but to the deck exit nearby. Fresh air, some normal breeze. I inhaled deep, trying to ground myself. That's when I saw it. The same man, standing near the railing, staring blankly out over the black ocean. He didn't blink, didn't move, just watched, and then he vanished. No footsteps, no splash, nothing, just gone. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't stay on deck 7 tonight. Not everything leaves. I dropped the phone, stunned. If you're listening, take a second to subscribe to Midnight Outcry. It helps keep stories like this alive. I knew then that sleep wouldn't come easy. Not tonight. Not ever, perhaps. Sleep never came that night. Every time my eyelids closed, the pulsing light from the stairwell burned behind them. I tried reading in bed, hoping the words of a dull history textbook might anchor me to reality. The hum of the Sea Monarch's engines was too steady, too alive, like it was breathing beneath the floorboards. Around midnight, I heard it again. My name, soft, wet, drawn out, and from somewhere above the ship. Not the corridors, not my cabin, from the open deck. I crept out of my room, phone flashlight weak against the shadows. The hall smelled like damp metal and old paint, and the sound of water dripping somewhere inside the walls made me step faster. I reached the stairwell and paused. The lights were off. Total darkness now, except the faintest glow from above deck. I climbed cautiously. Each step groaned under my weight. Halfway up, I noticed it. A lifeboat dangling, swinging in the air, not attached to anything, casting long shadows like skeletal arms. My stomach churned. Lifeboats weren't supposed to float like that, inside a deck hallway. I reached the top deck. Wind tore at my clothes, rain beginning to drizzle. The lights above were flickering neon green, reflecting on the slick floor. A crowd of passengers stood silently, heads down. They weren't moving, just standing. But as I approached, one raised its head, all at once. Every single one, their faces pale, eyes hollow, mouths open in the same expression of horror. I froze, and then the whispering started again. Hundreds of voices overlapping, calling names, repeating my own in sharp, jagged rhythm. I stumbled backward, tripping over a deck chair. The voices stopped. Silence. Only the engine hum and the patter of rain. I caught my breath, heart hammering. Rational thought returned for a moment. Maybe it was a mass hallucination, a collective dizziness from seasickness or the storm outside. Maybe it wasn't real. But then I heard it, a faint knocking from the ship's PA system. Not a system announcement, but a soft tap, tap, tap like someone rapping on metal. I followed it down to the lower dining hall, where a small group of crew were working late. I saw one normal, grounded moment, the chef humming while polishing plates, another crew member joking about lost silverware. They didn't notice me. No whispers, no pulsing lights, just ordinary late-night work. A brief comfort. My mind relaxed slightly, until the lights flickered and the room froze. Not one person moved. The glasses stopped clinking mid-polish. The humming ceased mid-note. And then, every head turned slowly toward me, all at once. I bolted. Back into the corridors, stairwell lights pulsing again, doors slamming in empty rooms. I passed cabin 714. The door cracked open. Inside, I saw a row of life jackets hanging, all with names stitched into them. My name, my parents' names, my ex-wife's. Every name I recognized. Every name I had ever feared losing. The jackets began to sway, rising off the hooks as though alive. I stumbled backward, tripping, sliding across the wet floor. I reached the rail of the main atrium and looked down, only to see the ocean had replaced the entire hall. Waves crashed against glass walls, water stretching to infinity. I tried to run, but the floor gave way. Water surged around me, pulling me down, and I hit something hard. A hand? An arm? I didn't see it clearly, only felt it tugging me. And then the fog rolled in. Thick, heavy, suffocating, carrying whispers from below. I ran blindly through it, each step lost in the murk. Shapes shifted in the mist. Figures, shadows, faces. Some pressed against the glass. Some floated. Some ran alongside me. Impossible, yet terrifyingly real. At the end of the corridor, I saw a small opening. Deck exit? Lifeboat? I didn't care. I sprinted toward it, lungs burning. And then, silence. No water, no fog, no voices. Only the faint hum of the engine and the gentle creak of metal. I was back in my cabin, soaked, shivering, diary open on the desk, as if I'd never left. The next morning, or what I assumed was morning, I woke drenched and trembling. The Sea Monarch hummed gently, pretending nothing had happened. Breakfast was normal, bright lights, clinking silverware, laughter from families enjoying pancakes and scrambled eggs. I tried to eat, forcing myself to sit among the other passengers. One little girl dropped her fork. Her mother bent down to pick it up, smiling. It was ordinary, mundane, grounding. And then I noticed it. Every single passenger at the tables had blank eyes, staring just past me. Not a glance, not a blink, just empty windows. Their mouths moved in silent conversation, and every so often I could swear they repeated words I had whispered to myself in panic. Don't let them take me. I shoved my plate away and ran. This time, there was no faint hope in the corridors. Cabin doors had disappeared. Hallways stretched longer than possible. Carpets rippled beneath my feet like water. The lights flickered in sync with my heartbeat, casting shadows that weren't mine. In the crew's lounge, I found another grounded anchor, a janitor humming a pop song while mopping, completely unaware of the world warping around us. I wanted to ask for help, call someone. I even reached for the phone, only to hear it buzz with dozens of missed calls from myself. Every message I tried to send had returned unread. It wasn't just the fog anymore. Shapes began to manifest in the corridors. Figures with blurred edges, faces obscured, walking in patterns I couldn't follow. One reached out a hand, directly at me. I stumbled, tripping over a loose floor tile, scraping my palms. I ran to the stairwell, clinging to the railing. At the bottom I saw the lifeboats again, swinging empty, but now dripping with blood, as if freshly pulled from the ocean. I gagged. Every attempt to move forward felt like swimming through invisible resistance. Then I saw it, a cabin, slightly open, glowing faintly. Number 721. I pressed my face to the doorframe. Inside, a small desk held a radio, old, crackling static. On the other end, a voice whispered, "You can leave if you want." I ran toward it, desperate. Could this be my chance? I grabbed the microphone. My own voice came out, echoing weirdly, distorted like it had been recorded 100 times before. "I'm here, I'm trying to escape." Static. Silence. Then a burst of laughter. Low, wet, unmistakably human, but layered. Dozens of tones overlapping. The radio went dead. I turned, and the corridor stretched endlessly. Doors, hallways, and stairwells spun around me. I ran, screaming. And then I saw it. The deck, open to the night sky, illuminated by full moonlight. Calm water stretching to the horizon. My heart soared. Real water, real sky, real escape. I sprinted. My feet slapped the wet wood of the deck. The railing was cold. I leaned over. Waves lapped gently, lifeboats bobbing normally. Relief flooded me. I could almost touch it. Freedom, safety, air. And then the deck rippled beneath me. The rail bent like wax. Water surged from nowhere, taller than the ship itself. Waves swallowed me in a heartbeat. I thrashed, tried to grab a lifeboat, only to feel invisible hands pulling me downward. The world went black. I woke to darkness. Not just night, but a void that pressed against my chest. My clothes were dry, my body intact, but the hum of the sea monarch was louder than ever, vibrating through my bones. I realized I was standing on the deck again, but it wasn't the deck I remembered. Everything was distorted. The railing twisted into impossible angles, waves froze mid-crash, and the moon hung too low, its light silvered and warped. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Behind me, the fog rolled in, thicker than ever, carrying whispers of names I had forgotten, people I had once taught, passengers I had passed in the hallways. Each voice beckoned, coaxing me forward. I stumbled to the stairwell, desperate for some familiar interior, some enclosed space. The doors along the hall seemed normal at first, but one by one they opened on their own. Each revealed passengers suspended in time, frozen mid-step, mid-word, mid-laugh. I saw my own reflection in one glass panel. Not me entirely, but a version of me with pale, hollow eyes, staring back like a warning. I ran. In the captain's hallway, I found something I hadn't expected. A diary tucked under a loose floorboard. The cover read, "The Sea Monarch Never Forgets." I flipped it open. Pages scribbled in jagged handwriting describe passengers being, quote, folded into the ship, becoming part of its memory, its corridors, its fog. The last entry was dated today, my name. A sudden crash made me spin. The fog figures had gathered, surrounding me. Not the pale shadows from before. Now they had faces, familiar and terrifying, contorted in expressions of panic and sorrow. One stepped forward, reaching for me. I tried to step back, tripping over nothing, landing hard. I scrambled to the radio again, hoping for a voice, for instructions, for help. I heard one faint word, "Hurry," and then static. I called out, screaming my own name into the microphone. Then a deck door opened above me. Moonlight spilled across the warped wood. It was my escape. Lifeboats, calm water, everything as normal as it could feel. I lunged, grasping at the rail, straining against the invisible pull. I felt hands on my shoulders, icy and unrelenting. I twisted, kicking, clawing. I was dragged backward, toward the fog, toward the ship's body. And in that moment, I saw the faces again, my reflection among them, joining the frozen passengers, a mirror of myself being folded into the ship's endless memory. And then, silence. Hours, days, I don't know how long, passed. I awoke in my cabin again, the diary open on the desk. A fresh entry appeared in handwriting I didn't recognize. Caleb Turner, observed, remembered, waiting for the next. I tried to leave. Doors led to the same twisted corridors. Decks stretched impossibly long. Even the ocean outside had no horizon. The sea monarch had absorbed me completely. Somewhere in the distance, I heard laughter. Familiar names called my own. Whispers beckoned, and I realized I wasn't just a passenger anymore. I was part of the ship. Observing, recording, waiting. And if you take a cruise on the Sea Monarch, I might be watching you. Story 5. The corridor was empty. Too empty. The steady hum of the ship's engines usually comforted me, but tonight it felt like a warning. A shuffle echoed just beyond the bend, faint but deliberate, followed by a whisper I couldn't place. Liam. I'm Liam Carter, 34, a travel photographer from New York. I booked the Sea Monarch, hoping for solitude and inspiration, away from city chaos and endless deadlines. I wanted to document the ship, the ocean, the night sky, not realize I was being watched. Curious, observant, cautious by nature, I had no idea how quickly curiosity could become a trap. At first, the cruise felt normal. The dining hall smelled of roasted fish and fresh bread. Guests laughed quietly over cocktails. Crew moved efficiently. I even took a photo of a couple smiling at the buffet, thinking how ordinary life continued while unease crawled up my spine. That normalcy sharpened every fear. By the time I reached the observation deck, fog had begun to coil along the railings, curling and thickening with a life of its own. The water reflected moonlight, but the reflections wavered unnaturally, like ripples moving independently of the waves. I blinked, thinking my eyes played tricks on me. I wandered toward cabin 712, where I had earlier found a small notebook. Inside were sketches of impossible corridors, notes like, "Do not follow," and "Once seen, you belong." My handwriting, or something mimicking it, covered pages with frantic loops. A map of the ship stared back at me, one section highlighted in red. "Eyes here." The PA system crackled. "Dinner announcement." Routine, right? Except the voice. Closer, intimate, almost teasing. "Liam, observe, stay." My name, clearly, personally. I froze. Rational thinking screamed. Imagination. Heart thumped anyway. Corridors shifted. Angles impossible. Walls twisting slightly as if alive. Doors appeared and vanished. Deck 7, the one supposedly closed, stretched ahead unnaturally. One door slid open by itself. Inside, lifeboats stacked in impossible configurations, some hovering midair. My stomach sank. The Sea Monarch had a history. Rumors buried in shipping logs, vanished in 1962, returned with no crew alive. Deck 7 never officially listed. I had dismissed it online. Now I wondered why. I moved forward, shoes squeaking against damp wood. Whispers layered around me, passengers from earlier, unseen crew members, all murmuring my name. A door slammed behind me, echoing down the twisting corridors. I stepped onto the main observation deck. Fog and moonlight collided, creating shadows that bent reality. Below, lifeboats floated toward me as if aware of my presence. I whispered to myself, "It's nothing." But the truth throbbed in my veins. I was being hunted. Something stirred in the fog. A figure appeared, human-shaped, head cocked, studying me, then gone. I wasn't sure if it moved or I had. I backed toward a side corridor, heart hammering, fog pressing closer. Whispers repeated, louder now. Stay, observe, become. A faint lamp flickered above. I saw a note taped to the wall. Do not trust the passage. Turn back. My gut twisted. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't imagination. The ship was alive. I ran. I didn't stop running until the fog swallowed me completely. My shoes slapped against the slick wood, echoing down corridors that seemed longer than they should have been. Deck 7 stretched ahead like a maze, angles impossible, walls pulsing faintly as if the ship itself breathed. I ducked into the lounge, hoping for a moment of normalcy. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and stale coffee, and a few passengers sat scattered in silence, playing cards or scrolling on tablets. Their presence, mundane and human, grounded me, just enough to remember what reality felt like. I swallowed, trying to catch my breath, but then the lights flickered. The passengers froze mid-action, heads tilting unnaturally in unison, eyes fixed on me. Not one blinked. Not one breathed. The deck lamp above hummed, the sound stretching, vibrating through my bones. I stumbled backward. The normal moment had been a tease. I spun and ran again, finding a stairwell that led downward. The walls here were damp, smell of salt water thick in the air. I thought about using the emergency radio. Maybe the crew could help. Maybe this was a prank. Maybe anything. I found it, twisted the dial, and heard only static. Then the faint, familiar whisper. You can leave, if you want. False hope clawed at me. I yanked the radio down, throwing it into the fog. It vanished instantly, as if the ship consumed it. Heart racing, I stumbled toward the lower deck, spotting a lifeboat still tethered. Maybe, I could escape. I yanked the release, but the ropes grew impossibly long, sliding into the water, as if some unseen hand stretched them into the dark sea. The boat floated, then tilted. I stepped closer, trembling. A shadow moved beneath the water, massive and human-shaped, reaching for the boat. I reeled back. The corridors twisted again. I recognized none of them, though I had walked these decks hours ago. Doors opened and closed on their own. Voices whispered from every angle, passengers I had never met, crew members missing for decades, all chanting softly, observe, belong, stay. I turned a corner and saw it, a figure, standing still, arms by its sides. At first human, then grotesquely distorted, limbs stretching and folding like reflections in warped glass. Its face split into dozens of smaller faces, all familiar, all staring. I backed away, gasping. A faint memory surfaced, a photo I took in the dining hall earlier. Could it be? Had the ship already absorbed them, and now they existed only as part of it? My stomach churned. I reached a side deck with chairs scattered haphazardly. Normalcy again. A faint breeze hit my face. I grabbed a chair to steady myself. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a pair of shoes moving without a person. Slowly, deliberately toward me. I bolted. Fog thickened. I could hear the hum of the ship's engines, but beneath it, a slower, deeper rhythm, like a heartbeat. Mine? Or the ship's? I pressed forward. The lower corridors ended in a dead end, a blank wall that wasn't there before. A door appeared, etched with old, peeling letters. Observation point restricted. I opened it, hoping for a stairwell or a control room, anything human. Instead, the room was empty, silent, save for a monitor displaying a deck map, and my name appeared on it. Underneath, permanent passenger. I stepped back, heart hammering. The whispers crescendoed. Shapes emerged in the fog outside the door, drifting closer. I spun, saw nothing, then felt the cold, impossible hand grip my shoulder. I screamed. I ran down the twisted corridors, every step echoing like gunfire in the fog. My breath came in ragged gasps, and for the first time, I noticed how quiet the rest of the ship had become. No clinking glasses, no shuffling passengers, only the hum of engines and that faint, impossible heartbeat beneath it. I turned a corner and froze. A hallway stretched endlessly, walls bending impossibly. At the end, a figure stood, tall, featureless, yet undeniably human-shaped. I could see it shift slightly, then disappear into the fog. My stomach knotted. I was being followed, studied, hunted. I reached a small observation deck that jutted over the water. Normal life, or what I thought was normal, flashed in my mind. The couples laughing, the crew serving meals. I forced myself to take a deep breath. A small window offered a view of the lifeboats below. Most were gone, but one floated alone, eerily still. I thought maybe I could escape. As I stepped toward it, the water stirred. Shadows moved beneath the surface, large, deliberate. A hand, impossibly long, lashed out toward the boat. I stumbled back. My rational mind screamed, "It's impossible." My body screamed, "Run!" The corridor behind me warped. Doors appeared where none should be. Whispers layered, some frantic, others mocking. "Observe, belong, stay." I turned a corner, and the floor tilted slightly beneath me, giving the sensation the ship itself was breathing. I tried the emergency radio again. Static. Then a faint, garbled voice. "Liam, listen, don't fight." False hope. I smashed the radio, but it vanished into thin air, as if swallowed by the ship. The fog thickened, and I realized I was surrounded. Figures emerged, some resembling passengers I had seen, others completely alien, all floating slightly above the deck, drifting toward me. Their faces split, merged, disappeared, then reappeared in impossible angles. I saw a door with peeling letters. Observation point, restricted. I remembered the monitor with my name on it. My pulse raced. I had to move. I tried to find another deck, a stairwell, anything human, anything safe. Suddenly, a hand gripped my shoulder, cold, solid, unyielding. I spun, but there was nothing there. Fog pressed closer, whispers growing louder, incoherent yet urgent. Shapes twisted around me, shadows folding in impossible ways. My camera fell from my hand, the screen lit up with my own terrified face, multiplied dozens of times. I bolted down another corridor, and for a brief moment, I saw a normal exit door, bright light spilling through. I ran toward it, heart hammering, lungs burning. But as I reached the threshold, it dissolved into fog. Nothing remained but the endless, twisting corridor and the whispers. A sudden screech echoed from deep within the ship, metallic and unnatural. The entire deck vibrated beneath my feet. Shapes surged from the fog, converging toward me. I ran blindly, slipping on wet wood, my mind racing. Every corridor seemed to multiply, bend, trap me in loops. Then I saw it, a control panel, old and rusted, lights blinking. I grasped at it desperately, pressing buttons, hoping for something. An alarm, a signal, a lifeboat release. The screen flickered. My name appeared again. Beneath it, permanent passenger, final observation. I fell back, heart hammering. The ship's hum deepened, vibrating through my bones. Whispers reached a fever pitch. Observe, become, stay. My vision blurred. My hands shook uncontrollably. I realized with cold certainty there was no escape. The Sea Monarch wasn't just a ship. It was alive. And it wanted me. I staggered through the corridors, fog pressing against me from every side. The ship groaned, walls bending, floors tilting as if alive, reacting to my every move. My breaths came fast, shallow, and for the first time I realized the Sea Monarch wasn't merely a vessel, it was a predator. Ahead, a faint glow appeared. I ran toward it, convinced it was a door leading to safety, but as I approached, the glow solidified into a room filled with floating passengers, all silent, faces expressionless, eyes fixed on me. They hovered just above the deck, suspended as if by invisible strings. My stomach churned. Every person I had passed on the ship, every smile, every nod, they were gone. Consumed. I turned to flee, but the corridor had shifted again. Angles impossible, walls twisting into new forms. The whispers returned, louder, more insistent. Observe, belong, stay. I stumbled, gasping, trying to find a stairwell or lifeboat. Then I saw it. A stairwell descending into black water, dark and calm, like an infinite pool. I hesitated, heart hammering. The fog thickened, shapes forming just at the edges of vision. I had nowhere left to run. A hand, impossibly cold, touched my shoulder. I spun, saw nothing, but felt a pressure, a pulling sensation, as if the ship itself was drawing me in. My camera, still around my neck, flashed images I hadn't taken, twisted versions of the corridors, of the floating passengers, and of me, smiling, calm, observing. I stumbled, tried to resist, but the floor beneath me rippled like water. I found a lifeboat, tethered to a rope, floating just beyond the deck. Desperate, I leapt toward it. The rope lengthened impossibly, as if dragged by invisible hands. I landed, gasping, but the boat tilted, and dark water rose around me. Shapes surged beneath the surface. Passengers, crew, shadows. I screamed, and for a moment, I thought the boat might hold. Then I heard it, clear and intimate. Liam, observe, become. I realized it. The ship didn't want to kill me. It wanted me to watch, to become a part of it, to join the eternal observation. My hands gripped the boat's edge, but the water surged upward, fog curling around me. The whispers crescendoed. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed. And then, silence. The deck below glistened in moonlight. The fog drifted lazily, the hum of engines steady and comforting again, as if nothing had happened. But on the observation monitors, a new name appeared. Liam Carter, permanent passenger. If you're listening, take a second to subscribe to Midnight Outcry. It helps keep stories like this alive. I don't know how long I floated there, watching the corridors stretch endlessly, observing passengers who were no longer alive, yet still moving. Part of me remains watching. And sometimes, late at night, I hear someone calling my name through the fog. The sea monarch drifts on, and somewhere in its endless halls, I am still there.